Happy December 14th, 2022. It's Kyle Shanahan's birthday today, guys. He turns 43, just like me. I'm also 43. So just thought I'd put that out there to get all the attention that I could possibly get from everyone for letting them know it's my birthday whenever any chat decides to join or on the replay. But hey, Ted, how's it going, man?
Good, Aaron. Happy birthday. Happy 43rd. I didn't get you a present. I guess
That's okay.
I guess my presence is my present today.
Your presence is your present. Your presence is your present. Yeah, thank you. It's another year older, man. Another day alive with air and to breathe. So I'm thankful for that. My present is the Niners playing on Thursday. It's kind of like what I get. A little early football for the week. So here's hoping that they actually win tomorrow, and I can be super duper happy going into the weekend. It's crazy. After the game we saw on Sunday, all the physicality and all the injuries, I think the last thing we wanted was a Thursday night game, but unfortunately, here it is. Real quick, just want to say thank you to Raphael562. Join the chat. He just gave me a $5 super for my birthday. Thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. It means a lot. Thank you. And Brian Culp is also in the building at the moment. Thank you, Brian, for coming through. Thank you for the nice birthday wishes. So to me, it's the thing that stands out to me going into Seattle is it's been the 49ers house of horrors for years, especially during the Russell Wilson, Richard Sherman, Legion of Boom era. We just, good luck. We never got to win in Seattle. This is a little bit of a different story, or at least we thought it was going to be before kind of all the injuries started setting in. To me, this is not a must-win game, but I think it would do us well to clinch this early because depending on how things shake out down the stretch, record-wise, resting some guys or maybe having some guys not play for the stretch. If say like we can improve our record going say within the next couple weeks, say we drop one and Minnesota goes up a couple and we have our playoff seeding. I wouldn't mind something like that. But what's your take on going into Seattle where we've had all sorts of issues and trying to, just like 2019, seal down that division?
Well, we're favored, and Vegas has us favored by 3.5 points. I do think that we'll win, but I do think it's going to be a really tough game. And I do think the people that are saying, oh, we're going to blow them out, might be not really looking at the entire picture.
Right.
There's a lot of things. My article should be coming out soon, my preview article, and I had quite a few areas of concern for this game. And happy to share, those with you. If you want me to just kind of start rattling them off, I can.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So one is Brock Purdy. First of all, he's injured, right? He's got the injured oblique and rib. That's going, if he can play, which I do think he will play, then that's going to affect his ability to throw the ball deep or throw with velocity, shorter passes with high velocity. It's going to cause pain and discomfort and make it more difficult to throw. So that will likely affect his velocity, which is probably not, high-powered rifle to begin with. You look at no Debo, right? That's a big weapon for us. If you don't think he's our best weapon, it's hard to argue that he isn't our most bruising weapon at the very least.
Right.
You look at rookie quarterbacks in Seattle since 2005 are 3-12. So the Seahawks are 12-3 against rookie quarterbacks. They win most of the time against rookie quarterbacks up there at Lumen or whatever they're calling it these days, Lumen Field. You look at something came up today since I wrote my article, so I may not make it in there. But the Seattle Seahawks don't blitz much. And last week, I had a show with Zach Hernandez from 49ers Hive, and we were talking, and I was saying, maybe the Bucs will look at what the Dolphins did blitzing so much, and they won't blitz so much. And the Bucs did blitz, and Brock beat both those teams. But Zach said, when you have a young quarterback, why blitz them? Because you basically are giving them a hot route that they don't really have to think much about. They don't really have to read the defense. It's like the guys are bearing down on them, and they can throw quick to someone who's likely going to be open or at least single covered. And so the Seattle Seahawks blitz the 5th least amount of any team in the NFL. So maybe we'll get to see that. Might be more of a test for Brock than blitzing him. We'll see. So those are some of the things that are general. I mean, specifics. I'm worried about Tariq Woolen on Brandon Ayuk. He's a hell of a cornerback. Tyler Lockett has a 6-game touchdown streak going, longest in the NFL by 2 or 3 games. DK Metcalf is a matchup nightmare for any of our DBs. Kenneth Walker is a hell of a back. He didn't play last week against the Carolina Panthers. Neither did Shelby Harris, their defensive lineman. And Al Woods got injured pretty early in the game, and that's when their run defense kind of crumbled. Doesn't look like Al Woods will play, but I haven't seen the report for today either. I know he didn't practice yesterday, and it seemed like the Seahawks people I talked to yesterday, a couple of Seahawks content creators and fans on, and they were saying that they thought that Al Woods would not play. But, if he does play, he's one of those big Vince Wilfork looking kind of guys who can space-eating defensive tackle, who could get in the way of a run game, which is how we're going to want to try and beat the Seattle Seahawks. So those are some of the concerns that I have. We're thin at defensive tackle with, Gibbons being out, Ridgeway out the week before. Kerry Hyder is a question mark. So we don't really have any of those run-stuffing, space-eating defensive tackles on our own roster. It's just basically Armstead and T.Y. McGill, as far as I know, of true defensive tackles that aren't more of these hybrid types. So those are some of my concerns. I mean, also special teams, right? If you look at the matchups against the Seattle Seahawks and the 49ers over the last few years, special teams has played a huge role, going back to a game I was at, Halloween, Monday Night Football, Week 10 of 2019, where Chase McLaughlin kicked wide left in overtime, and the ball basically went down the tunnel. I mean, it was so far off.
I remember that.
It was to win the game. And I'll give him some credit. Like, he basically made almost every other kick for us while he was filling in for Robbie Gould. But, of course, the one he missed was massive. Then you look at 2021, and you had Trenton Cannon, who fumbled 2 kickoff returns, one in each game versus the Seahawks. The early game at Levi's, he fumbled. It was like 14-14. He fumbled the kick return, and or maybe it's 14-7. And then Russ got the ball and scored in like 2 plays. All of a sudden it's 21-7 in that game. And then in the second game in Seattle, he fumbled a kick return, and we got the ball deep in our own territory. And then Jimmy G got sacked for a safety. So it cost us at least 2 points. I think they might have got a field goal on the next drive too, because it was a short drive. And then obviously the big one in 2021 was the fake punt in Seattle, where they got a touchdown off of that. It was deep in their own territory and not a 4th and short at all. And they caught us totally unawares and got a big TD, and that was the difference in the game. And then even earlier this season in week 2, when Trey Lance got injured at Levi's, the only TD that the Seahawks scored was a blocked field goal attempt that we had, where I think it was Woolen blocked it and Michael Jackson returned it, or the other way around. Michael Jackson blocked it and Woolen returned it for the touchdown. And so that's a concern, especially with Tarvarius Moore's been out for a while. Dante Johnson just tore his ACL. And then we had Samuel Womack was doing really good things on special teams, and now he's out with a concussion too. So I like Brian Schneider, the special teams coordinator that we picked up in the offseason. But any coach needs his horses. He needs the guys to, execute his game plan. And I'm start to worry that, our special teams is running out of horses.
Yeah, to me, this is a game that I just want to survive with injuries. There's so many injuries on the board right now. And I think that's the one thing that could derail anything with us is just injuries. I think they're the biggest concern over opponents that we play. The opponents are one thing, but I mean, I look at the remaining schedule and it's all winnable. It just matters on who we got, who's healthy. That's why I keep thinking, say we clinch the division and we can't better our seeding. Do we see a little bit of certain players sitting certain games just to save them for the playoffs? It's not always good to do because I think momentum's a real thing in football, but man, the good thing about this game is that after it, they get a 3-day weekend before starting to prepare for the Commanders, I think. So, the Niners all about just making their way through this game with as many no injuries. Someone or some, more than one player is probably going to get nicked up. Just hope the severity isn't as bad. That's why it's a house of horrors too, because we think of the Navarro Bowman injury that happened, or I think Kittle got hurt in one game in Seattle, right? His ankle or something.
Kittle broke his foot on a high pass from Nick Mullins.
Yep.
After Jimmy had been pulled from the game, Mullins floated one to the left sideline, and Kittle came down funny on his foot, and he was out for 6 weeks, I think.
Yeah. So just everything about Seattle just screams, get in there. We're the better team. We have a better roster. We have in the last couple of weeks facing either the Bucs or the Dolphins. I think we're the better team. But sometimes the injuries and just the battle of attrition is what really gets the 49ers. My question to you is, could you see a possibility where, can't believe I'm going to say this, Josh Johnson starts and we have to bring up maybe Jacob Eason as the backup? And would you be comfortable with Josh Johnson at quarterback?
No. I mean, yes, I could see it. No, I'm not comfortable with it. Please, no. God, no. Yeah, I mean, Josh Johnson is like something like 1-8 for us in starts. Granted, he didn't have all these weapons, but we don't have Debo. Yeah, I don't trust him. I guess he's played pretty well for some other teams in the not too distant past, but not good enough to get off anyone's practice squad. So
right, here's a reason he's been. There's a reason he's been what he's been for as long as he's been. It's not a coincidence. It's not chance. There's been a question in the chat about Kinlaw playing and what's the status. It looks like after this game, the week of the Commanders, he will start practicing. So after this game, after the 3-day weekend where the players go home, they will be, the game is on a Thursday. You got Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Monday or Tuesday would be, the beginning of the next practice week. So look for that for him to start practicing. They've been saying he's close. Now, we've heard that about a lot of players, and they ended up having injury setbacks galore. This team is known for their injury setbacks. So I'm cautiously optimistic. We could really use him right now. We are so banged up in the defensive tackle department, and I know we drafted him, and he had all these expectations, and we wanted him to be the second coming of DeForest Buckner. But I'll take a run stuffer right now, just a space eater. Let Armstead, Bosa, and Ebukam do the work. You know what I mean? So hopefully he's back for the Commanders game. You just wonder if he can actually make it through a game and he doesn't re-injure himself and then he's out for the year again. So, yeah, that's kind of the status on him with that. Just want to say real quick hi to a couple people that joined in here. We got Rohan Chakravarthi. He says one thing on Kinlaw, huge amount of break between Seattle and Washington with short week. Could return, but also could return for the playoffs only. Yep. Hey, like I said, if they clinch the division and at some point within the next 3 weeks after, Minnesota, keeps their lead on them and they are not able to progress farther than the seed that they are at, I wouldn't mind seeing certain guys just say, you know what, we'll save you for the playoffs and don't worry about it and play other people. But that's not how usually the Niners do things, and that's usually not how a lot of NFL teams do things. So that's just me trying to make it to the playoffs with some as many healthy bodies as possible. We got Niner Gang Wolfcast in here. What's up, my man? Thank you for coming through. Awesome young content creator on YouTube. Cowboy Angel, thank you very much for coming through. a rather new supporter of the channel who's now a regular supporter of the channel. So thank you very much for coming through. Brent Smith, I know I've seen you before. You're a lot newer to the channel. Thanks for coming and supporting. And Randy Daytona, what's going on, man? He says, "What's up, Aaron and Ted? Thank you for coming through. Appreciate it." If Purdy plays, can Purdy continue to play well? Do you think this is a sustainable thing, or do you think this is more of a Nick Mullins type of situation?
That's a tough question. I think, I think he can keep playing well. I did want to see what would happen with defenses rushing 4 and dropping 7 and making him figure it out and not giving him that quick read and making him figure out the defenses. But ultimately, I'm a believer in, reps against our first team D and reps with our elite weapons will build synergy. So I could see how he could get better. There's the flip side that the defensive coordinators will see more film on him and eventually figure out his tendencies and figure out how to eliminate, his strengths and attack his weaknesses. But I believe in Brock Purdy. I mean, I think we had seen a little bit of some injured defenses that he's played. As far as the Dolphins were missing their starting one of their starting safeties. They had Javon Holland, but their other safety was out, and they had Xavier Howard, but Byron Jones was out. And
Xavier Howard, for what my brother is a Dolphins fan, he said he's been hurt all year. He's been dealing with some lower leg injuries, so he's not the Xavier Howard you're used to. He's a really good corner. And as far as Byron Jones, my brother is so pissed. He's been hurt all year with, I forget exactly the injury, and there has been absolutely zero update. Nobody knows anything. It almost seems like he's saving himself to not be there next year, where, his health is more important than playing. My brother's all about, like, as good as Byron Jones is when he plays, he's like, get out of here. If you don't want to be here, get out of here. Like, go, get out. So, yeah, you're right. They were definitely injured for sure, Dolphins.
Yeah, the proverbial business decision, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not on the field, but the one that keeps you off the field. That's even worse. Right. And then with the Bucks, they were missing both safeties. Antoine Winfield Jr., who's a stud. They also were missing Mike Edwards, who's, he's at least a starter in the league. Sean Murphy-Bunting didn't suit up. Their nickel corner got injured early. And the big one for me was, excuse the pun, the big one was Vita Vea, who's a massive human being and arguably one of the best defensive tackles in the league. He got injured really early in the game before Kevin Givens even did. So, that Bucks D it's a good D. It's a top 10 D when healthy, but they weren't healthy Sunday. So, just take that into consideration. I'm not trying to say we didn't deserve the win. I'm not trying to say even maybe that we wouldn't have won if those guys had all played. We might have. I just think it would have been a lot closer. And I always say in a close game, anything can happen. So, it shed some questions in my mind on it, I guess I would say.
Do you have the mindset? Because I'm kind of teetering on this. Some people are like, he's shown enough. He's going to take us to the promised land. And I'm like, oh. And then there's more of like, wait and see. Could be another Nick Mullins situation. Everybody relax. I'm kind of in the middle of both of those. Mm-hmm. He's played really well. Yes. And he's done some things that neither like Nick Mullins couldn't do. Is that I feel like he can actually read a defense. Mm-hmm. He's just severely limited in his skill set. He's a small guy, doesn't have a big arm. He's mobile though. That's the one thing about it. I said, I don't know if you guys, anybody who follows me on Twitter, if you watched during the game, I said Jeff Garcia vibes. I tweeted that. He just gives me a Garcia because Garcia didn't have a really big arm either.
No.
He was a scrambling, freaking, just all over the place and chuck and duck, kind of guy with T.O. and all the weapons that the 49ers had in 2002. I think they still had, I don't know if J.J. Stokes was there. I forget. Anyways, point being, I am cautiously optimistic, but at the same time, you just got to see more. You just have to see more. in my mind, do I want him to be that dude for this year? Yes. But at the same time, if he falls on his face within the next couple of weeks and we kind of see him kind of come back to earth, going to say to myself, and I know a lot of fans are going to say, damn it, I knew it was too good to be true. So it's kind of like, I want it to be the first one and not the latter. So, but I just say with everybody, relax. Now, I had a stream the other day, the NWO stream, Beto, Niner Sickness Podcast. He's all in on Purdy. Me, and I think Ryan, and Bashar from 49er Minded and Ryan from No Border Sports, we're both like, easy, pump the brakes. Let's see a little bit more here. I want to be totally in on this kid. Believe me, I really do. Because his moxie's there. He's slightly got an ego, which I think you have to have as a quarterback. I think it's super important to have an ego. Really good with the media. The one thing he does have against him, though, is he's bad with the clock. But I think I would just chalk that down to inexperience at quarterbacks. I think a lot of young quarterbacks have clock issues. So I want to say that I think they will continue it, at least for this year, or at least as far as they can go. I think he's not going to have such a precipitous drop off to all of a sudden he can't complete a pass. I just think that the wild plays might start to diminish a little bit. And we might start seeing a little bit more of a leveled off version of him. But I hope I'm wrong. You know what I'm saying?
No, I think you're right. I think I'm just like you. I'm optimistic. But I'm not buying into the split pick of Brock and Joe Montana that I'm seeing floating around.
Yeah, dude. And Joe Montana was a special player. You can't all this people are. Oh my God.
And then, but I'm also not calling him Nick Mullins either, though. I mean, Nick Mullins had super ball security issues, and Nick Mullins, it's kind of a good thing in a way, but not really. He would tend to sort of lock on his number one and just force feed.
Yeah.
In 2018, it was Kittle when he broke the tight end record. In 2020, I noticed it with Ayuk, where he had a really big season with Mullins feeding him. And so at least on limited games, he had quite a few yards. They had quite a few yards together. So no, I think Purdy's better than Nick Mullins. And the one that gets me is when people start to say, oh, we don't need Trey Lance or trade Trey Lance. It just doesn't make any sense to me because, some of the early stats are out now and like they're similar, Trey Lance and Purdy. But you got to keep in mind that, Trey Lance barely had Kittle for most of those games he's played for us. The only game that Kittle played the whole game was the Texans game. And he played half of the Seahawks game when Jimmy got injured, the first Seahawks game in 2021. But, Kittle was already injured in that game from Jimmy throwing a hospital ball where Kittle just got absolutely jammed. And he was already playing with a hurt calf to start with. And that was the one that kind of, after that, sent him out onto IR. But, and then also Lance, barely had Kittle, I'll say. And then he didn't have any CMC. And CMC, we can tell, is a difference maker in this offense. You can just see that, the DVOA went from like 21 in the league when we got him to, I think we're down to 4 and then 3 this week in offensive DVOA. So he's been just an incredible addition to the team, an incredible trade. I was slightly against it when I first heard about it, hearing all the picks. Then when I saw how many we had left, I was like, well, and then thinking about all the ones we were going to get from D'Amico and ones we still had coming from other coaches and GMs who had been hired away. It started to be like, well, he's kind of like Debo. He's kind of like a run receiver compared to Debo's a wide back. They can do a lot of things, similar things, just in different ways. CMC is going to juke you and avoid contact a little bit better, but Debo's going to run people over a little bit better. They're both real good at both, but nobody's like Debo for running people over.
Before I get to my next question or topic, Brent Smith asked, we need to give Jordan Mason more carries. I totally agree with that. He is really, really good. Like, okay, so I don't know if you guys last week, I had Larry Krueger on, okay? 2 people he called out that he thinks are really good and that a lot of people are sleeping on. was Jordan Mason and Purdy. And I tweeted Larry during the game. It's almost like you were a prophet or something because both of them were balling on Sunday. Both of them played really well. Brian Culp says Debo has T-Rex arms. Definitely. I just think the way that they're doing it, where they kind of use CMC in the first half, and if the Niners have a lead, they bring in someone like Jordan Mason to kind of be your closer. Totally fine with that. CMC or Christian McCaffrey, not a big guy, injury concerns, put as many points as you can on the board and then start to use him in a little bit of a lesser role as the game goes on. And the Niners have been in 2 games where they've been able to kind of use that formula. And I think that's the best formula. Hasty's, you wonder, Ted, how the Niners have who looks out for these running backs that they seem to find every year? Do you think it's old man River back at the running backs coach? You know what I'm talking about.
Bobby Turner.
I think Bobby Turner, he might not have been in the building this past year, but I have a feeling he had something to do with this Jordan Mason character, because my brother's like, where do you find these people? I'm like, I don't know. It's a great thing though, right? That's why you don't spend high picks on running back unless it's like a Hall of Fame level, like Barry Sanders, Evan Smith, Dickerson, Peyton, those level of running backs. Running backs are always going to be available. And the Niners, because of the offense that they run, go through running backs like people go through toilet paper, because it's such a physical offense. So why not have a couple guys on your roster that make no money and have zero cap impact and are really good? And then, with the Niners, it's like a revolving door. Like every year they have a defensive player on the defensive line that plays really well, gets his money, goes somewhere else. They bring in somebody else, does the same exact job, so on, so forth. Same thing with the running backs. I think it's the same thing. I think it's more the system than it is the player. Players are good, but I think the system is really good too. So it's like that perfect mesh point. That'll transition me, I guess, into the next topic, which is if Purdy plays well, and some people in the chat are already kind of going there. If Purdy plays well and we get a deep playoff run with him or a Super Bowl championship, do we have a quarterback controversy next year?
I wouldn't say controversy, but I'd say competition. Why not? Competition's good for everybody. It's always good to feel that fire. I mean, quarterback's the one position where you kind of go, maybe it's not, where you get the split team, split locker room, and half the guys are, team Trey, half the guys are team Jimmy. But yeah, I think it's a good problem to have. Ultimately, I think Trey will win out. I think that he has, he's maybe not as quick as Purdy, but he's probably a little bit faster. He's taller. He's got the bigger arm. I just think he's got all the tools to be an elite quarterback, whereas I think Brock Purdy has the tools to be a really good game manager. And so I think that's the difference. One can be like your franchise QB, and one can be, Jimmy G, a little more dynamic, a little less mistakes, hopefully.
I don't want people to take this as a race comparison, because it's not, but it because of what I'm saying, the RG3 and Kirk Cousins situation is kind of playing itself out right now with the Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, and they just happen to be, of course, the same nationality, both of them. But that wasn't really a bad situation either. If one wouldn't have gotten hurt, that you would have had, RG3 doing his thing, and you would always had this really good backup, at least for a while, until maybe a team came and got him. That's not a bad problem to have, guys. I mean, Joe Montana was there and Steve Young was there for years. Steve Young wasn't ready, though. He was really raw for a long time. It took him a long time to get ready. And even when he started, his first full year as a starter, he got hurt and Bono played. So nothing's ever a smooth transition. Any of us who lived during the early part of the 90s, I mean, I was only like 10, 11 years old in like 90, 91. But I remember, the transition from Montana to Steve Young was a tough one, especially for hardcore fans who love Joe, and they got 4 championships with Joe. None of that is happening in either of these guys. Purdy is a great story right now. I hope it works out, but nobody knows how this story is going to end. And Trey hasn't played. He hasn't gotten a fair shot. He needs at least 2 full seasons of uninterrupted play to be able to get an honest opinion of him. All these idiots that say he's a bust or he's a horrible pick or this or that, I can see that part when you see what other teams have gotten with those picks, like the Dolphins. Yeah, the Dolphins have won the trade so far, but we haven't seen Trey. And unfortunately, we need to see more out of that situation. Quarterback controversy. Hey, man, it's a good problem to have. They'll have 2 good quarterbacks going into next year. That means Jimmy can finally go bye-bye. We don't need him anymore. It's been proven that maybe, hopefully, if Purdy keeps doing his thing, maybe it's part of the system too. And, I don't know. We'll see. It's hard to say. All I know is that it's a cool ride they're on right now. I know a lot of people are trying to read into next year, and I put the topic up there that kind of read into next year. Let's just all slow down and enjoy what's going on right now. The Niners have a chance to clinch the NFC West on Thursday. And then whatever happens after that is pro bono because, Philly is so far ahead. If we can get the 2 seed, then we're talking, because then that means if Philly loses at some point in the playoffs, we could end up having all our games in Santa Clara. So we'll see. But East Coast Red and Gold podcast said it. Enjoy the ride. It's all we got to do right now, guys. Let's not worry about next year. I brought the topic up to Ted because I think it would be a cool thing to think about. But at the same time, I'm all about just chill out. Let's just relax. And Kenny agrees he hasn't seen enough.
And you brought up an interesting thing with the Dolphins trade. And yeah, the Dolphins got some great players out of the trade for the picks we traded for Trey Lance. They got Tyreek Hill. They got initially they got Jalen Waddle with the number 12 overall pick that we traded. Then they used Tyreek Hill the 29th pick the next year to get Tyreek Hill. And then they used next year's first round pick. They traded to Denver for Bradley Chubb. So great players, great. But, the Niners couldn't afford Tyreek Hill. We have Deebo Samuel. The Niners couldn't afford Bradley Chubb. We have Nick Bosa. Waddle, okay, that I miss. We would love to have Waddle.
Waddle would have been great. But would he been effective with Jimmy, though?
Yeah, probably not nearly as effective as with Tua.
Right.
So yeah, exactly. So there's another good point. And we already have Ayuk in that respect too, who's a hell of a receiver. I think we're barely scratching the surface of what Ayuk can do with a real quarterback, with what I think Trey Lance will be able to do with him. So yeah, so before people bemoan the Dolphins trade too much, keep in mind that it's great for them, wouldn't have worked so well for us in our financial situation and with the players that we already had on board.
Celts Chronicles, who I will be streaming with this Friday on the channel. Actually, we'll be simulcasting on his channel and my channel. So pick whatever channel you want to go to and support. Or support both. Have the browser open on both channels. He says, Purdy's more polished now, understandably so. Trey's ceiling is higher. True. Bye, Jim. Great problem to have. Yep, totally agree. Finally could say bye-bye to Jimmy. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Because you think about it, most teams, if you get to your third-string quarterback, you're usually screwed. So we're in a really interesting situation because our third-string quarterback played 4 years of college football. He just is small and undersized and doesn't have a big arm. And, he doesn't fit all, like Larry Krueger, I had him on. He said he doesn't fit any of the measurables. He says, but the one measurable you can't ever measure is heart and smarts. You can't. You could be all world, super big arm, athletic, can do all these things. But if you can't read a defense, what good are you? Or you could be a little guy like him who's barely 6 foot, little over 200 pounds, doesn't have much of an arm, and he's moving around and making plays. That throw to Christian McCaffrey, it was kind of like a back shoulder throw for the touchdown. When have we ever seen Jimmy kind of make that kind of throw on a consistent basis? And this kid, first game as a starter, just plays balls out, doesn't care. That's the part that gives me hope that this could be a sustainable thing, is just the fact that he's smart and he's aggressive and he's got a chip on his shoulder. All those things, to me, if anything gives me hope that this can continue, would be that. So,
yeah, the Wonderlic doesn't tell if you can read a defense. So,
the old Wonderlic score. Let's see here. I wanted to say that I think the offense, even without Debo, is still lethal. Do you agree that the Niners still should be able to put up enough points in the circumstances currently to take care of Seattle?
Yeah, I mean, I'm picking us to win. I mean, as of now, I need to obviously wait and see exactly who's going to play and who isn't. If Purdy doesn't play, I'd probably fade us. But if Purdy plays and Hyder plays and Al Woods doesn't play, that's kind of what I'm expecting. Then, yeah, I'm going to pick us to win. I think by like 3 or 4 points, somewhere right around what we're favored by is what I think is a realistic. Maybe as much as 5 or 6. I don't know, but I'd be pushing it in my opinion. These games always seem to be really close right at the end, last second, last inch, last millimeter. That it comes down to with these two teams more times than not.
One thing too that I think is interesting is Seattle's been horrible stopping the run, and a good way to protect Purdy in this game, if you don't want to expose him to a lot of damage, is to try start running the ball early, and if it's effective, stay with it. Eliminate the amount of times you want anybody dropping back, whether it's going to be him or Josh Johnson. Seattle, I think the 5 or 6 last games, has just been an absolute sieve in the run game. So Niners being what they do good, maybe we see Jordan Mason early, and maybe it's a Jordan Mason / Christian McCaffrey, a little bit of a, swap in, swap out. Maybe we see a little bit more of McLeod on some reverses. Anything to keep the ball out of the quarterback hands, especially with the current situation with him having an oblique injury, which sucks. He took the oblique injury. I guess it happened on the dive.
Yep.
For the first, and then he also has like
called
a rib
back on a hold.
Yeah. So that's the situation with this game. I would eliminate the amount of exposure that you give to the kid in this game. Why not? Yeah. Do you kind of agree that if the Niners run game is hitting and the stats dictate that Seattle's really bad, and we do have we start out successful, you think that running the ball would kind of be a smart way to go on Thursday?
Absolutely, if we can do it, if they don't stack the box. I mean, I know, they're the 30th or 31st team against the run. I just feel like that's over a large, period of games, and in any one game, it might not show up quite as much, especially if they're not worried about Purdy throwing deep because of his oblique. So I do have some concerns about being able to run the ball, and having Debo. Like, it's not just having Debo in the backfield running the ball that helps, because quite honestly, he hasn't been that effective doing that. But I'm thinking more about when Debo's split out wide, in the X or Z position, then, it takes attention away from the center of the field, and whoever's running the ball from the backfield is going to have more space to run with Debo out there. So losing him hurts. I do think you're right. Ray we'll see in the backfield some, or, you mentioned reverses. I think we'll see Ray in the backfield some, playing wide back. I don't think he'll get a lot of carries up the middle per se, but maybe some like pitches and tosses and some screens. I could definitely see from, lining up in the backfield where Debo would have been. So I do think Ray can, ease some of the pain. Also would like to see some Danny Gray. He finally got his first catch against the Bucs. And I think Purdy throws a better deep ball than Jimmy G does. So maybe those two can get some synchronicity that Jimmy and Danny just weren't able to get together. So I would hope we'd see a little bit of him.
Speaking of Debo, what was your overall kind of reaction to when the injury happened? As you know, as with a lot of 49er fans, when it happened, a lot of us were thinking season-ending knee. Super depressing. Kind of, again, another game where we're kicking the crap out of the opponent, and there's like this huge cloud over. It's just like you can't even get excited. We're about to be 9-4, but our, one of the lifebloods of our offense, even though he's having a kind of a down year, he came in kind of fat. and he's just not been the same Debo. That sucked. And now to think that it could only be 3 weeks. Well, first of all, what was your immediate reaction, and what's your reaction to hearing the news?
Yeah, so I was heartbroken when I heard. I mean, to be honest, I was listening to the game on the radio. I was driving out of the mountains in a blizzard, and I was going to watch at the place we were staying in Lake Tahoe, and we lost power in the blizzard, and we didn't know if it would be on. We didn't want to stay in a place that had electric heaters with no electricity for the night. So
kind of an issue.
We booked it. Yeah. So, but just hearing it and hearing that Trent Williams looked really upset and that they brought the cart out for him, I'm just like, oh, the cart, that's never good. That's always, pretty darn serious when that happens. And then, at halftime, I heard that it was an ankle. And then I'm still kind of going, well, if it was the cart, I'm going worst case scenario. What if it's an ankle just like Trey's? Because Trey tried to, Debo tried to get up and couldn't, and Trey tried to get up and he couldn't. He kind of fell back down on the ground, and I'm thinking, wow, what if it's, this sort of broken fibula and 2 torn ligaments, and then to find out that it's minor and three-ish maybe weeks, just a minor MCL, it must be minor, and a minor high ankle sprain. I mean, I'm just over the moon. I couldn't be happier. It just and also that all the other injuries in the game were not season ending other than Dante Johnson. He's the only one. And, if you're going to lose one guy, I mean, I hate to say it, but that's probably the guy to lose with the season ending injury. It's not like, Kevin Givens or, Kerry Hyder. These are more pivotal pieces to our defense. So.
Yeah, I was very down, and I thought season's over for him. And then at halftime, I heard something that it might not be as serious. I guess there's somebody, medical official, that watches games and can determine by game film or TV the severity of injuries just based on the way that they fall or something. And he kind of said something along the lines of it might not be as serious. So you kept hearing that. And then Kyle to come out in the press conference and say, 3-ish weeks. What? Like, it seemed, I told my brothers, like, it just seems like the Niners' year. If they can just avoid that one season-ending injury to like a Bosa, a Greenlaw, Warner, somebody of importance. All these other guys that might fall to the side, that's one thing. But, as long as their main dudes don't get hurt, maybe this is just their year. I don't know if it is. It might not be. There's a lot going against the Niners that would say that it won't be. But what if it ends up being? And then you look at it and you see those kind of things. So if you were to do a recap going into next season and you look back on this season and say, man, Cards really fell the 49ers' way when it came to injuries. Yeah, they lost Mosley and this guy, but they were able to sustain with other players, and their their core guys never went down. You could look back, say, if we won a Super Bowl and say, well, that was the story of the season, So not say we're going to win the Super Bowl. Go ahead.
And when Lance came back.
Yeah, and then when Lance came back in the Super Bowl, that would be a whole, geez. This team is never short on stories. The thing with me, too, is, like I was saying to the chat, I want the chat to answer this question, too. The Niners clinch Thursday. And at some point in the next 3 weeks, I keep bringing this up, they cannot advance their seeding. Would you be okay with sitting certain guys like a Debo, like a Bosa, like a Warner, and let other guys play only if we can't advance our seeding? Or are you of the mindset of all hands on deck, let's do this, play till the last game? Who knows? Maybe things fall our way. What do you think, Ted?
I'm of two minds about it. I mean, part of me would love to rest the guys and have them, especially like if it was just maybe say the last game against the Cards, where it was just sort of like an extra bye week going into the playoffs. That's really almost like you got the bye with the number 1 seed, but instead you got it because you couldn't get the number 2 seed. And there's no chance of losing the number 3 seed to the Bucks or whoever comes out of the South. So that appeals to me for sure. The only thing I would say is I've always said that, winning isn't a light switch. It's not something you can just switch on and switch off, or switch
Agreed.
off and switch back on. Sometimes you go to switch it back on and the light's still dark, right? And so that would be my only concern with it. But I think, yeah, that's a tough one, and I guess we'll have to see what happens. But I tend to err more on the side of keep playing and keep the momentum. Momentum's real. I mean, going into the playoffs on like what would it be, like a 10-game win streak at that point or more? We were 3-4, and we would end up at 13-4. It would be a 10-game win streak going into the playoffs. That would be pretty incredible, I think. So
Brian Culp is of the mindset, if we play till the end, and if we win out, we get the number 2 seed. I hope that's the case. I'm just so snake bitten with these injuries, guys. I'm just so scared. Everyone's like, you can't be that way. I'm like, well, I am, because every freaking game we play, we lose like 3 guys. So it's like, eventually we're going to run out of players. But yeah, I would love for us to have the number 2 seed, because I think coming to our house with the crowd and the way this defense plays, when they got motivation behind them, there's some special mojo in Santa Clara. It's starting to happen. Not like Candlestick. That's a special storybook place that will always be in all 49er fans' hearts. I never made it to Candlestick, but I know how magical that building was. All the championships, Montana, Young, Rice, all those players. But if the Niners were to have another deep playoff run in Santa Clara and get to a Super Bowl, and God forbid they win it, you could say that Santa Clara is geeky and as plain and as just boring as the stadium looks, that maybe we're starting to get a little bit of a mojo and an advantage. So I'm down with Bryant. If we have a chance for the number 2 seed, regardless of the injuries that we worry about, I say go for it. So, and you're right. You can't turn on winning. It's not that easy. Some teams have 2 weeks off and then they get bounced in the first round. I think that happened to the Ravens a couple years ago, right? 2019. They clinch, and then they had that really bad game and they lost, and it was like, wow, all that for nothing. You spent all season getting that bye, and then you get bounced in the first round. It's almost like if you have to struggle and claw and scratch your way into the playoffs, it's almost like every week. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's almost like you'd rather go in that way than go in with the bye or whatever. I thought the Niners just ran out of energy last year in the NFC Championship game towards the end. I don't know if you got that vibe too, just because it took, it was such a long ride physically in the season.
Well, it was so much travel, because we traveled to the Texans, we traveled to the Rams, then we traveled to Dallas, we traveled to Lambeau, then we traveled again to the Rams. So that's like 6 or 7 weeks in a row of travel. And it's just like you're missing at least a day out of every week of like ice baths or practice or, whatever, good sleep. So eventually it catches up with you. And I think that's what happened to us in the NFC. Not to mention the fact that Jimmy G was injured and Trent Williams, was playing on one leg. Right. So
what's your feeling on the Niners if they can have another defensive gem in this game, like play another good defensive game? Think that there's a possibility, or you think they might take a step back a little bit?
I think Geno Smith is playing really well. I think DK Metcalf is a matchup nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Lockett's really good. They have 3 really solid tight ends in Disley, Colby Parkinson, and Noah Fant. None of them are superstars like Kittle, but they can all block and catch, kind of like Tyler Kroft. And so with 3 of them, it gives them a lot of formational flexibility. And then Kenneth Walker is a hell of a back. From what I haven't watched him play much, but from what I've seen, he seems very powerful and fast and dynamic. So yeah, I think Geno Smith might be people are getting mad at me. I think Geno Smith is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. I think I was talking to some Seahawks fans, and one of them said, you guys have the better roster, but we have the better quarterback. Doesn't that sound just like 2019? I'm like, wow, it kind of does. Also, I don't know if you know, but I was telling Wayne Breezy this morning on his show. I was talking to some Seahawks fans yesterday, and they brought up, guess who the superstar unheralded wide receiver 3 for the Seahawks is right now?
Marquise Goodwin.
Yeah. Of
course he is.
And you know how ex-Niners have shredded us all season, starting with Dante Pettis in Chicago. I think there was more, but I'm going to throw out, Jet McKinnon, obviously, for the Chiefs. And then against the Dolphins, River, Craycraft, and and obviously Sherfield on that 75-yard touchdown to start the game. I'm sure there's more that I'm missing, but those are at least 3 or 4 or 5, really big ones who have just tore us up, ex-Niners. So I have like almost no doubts that Marquise Goodwin will too. So that's one of my concerns as well. Just that speed, because Jimmy Ward is playing great at nickel corner now, but he's really good against like possession receivers and tight ends. Like I don't think you want to see him trying to chase Marquise Goodwin across the field. I don't think that favors Jimmy Ward. I don't think he's fast enough to keep up over long distances or double moves. I'll list Marquise Goodwin as a concern too.
Brian Culps thinks that we take care of business quite handily. I'm not sure how exactly the game's going to go. I think it'll be close. I said that the last couple of weeks, and both games have been blowouts. So
good. Say it again.
I think it's going to be close. No, man, the reason I say that is because it's a division game, and I think playing in CenturyLink or whatever it's called now is a challenge. This is going to be the first challenge for Brock Purdy if he plays, is going into that building and having to, hand signals and timing and having to figure out things. And one thing he's been struggling with, and he's been doing really well in a lot of things, is the clock. He can get better with the clock, then I have him on less concern. But I think going into this building, if they can somehow stem the tide, if he can stem the tide, the way the Niners stem the tide in this game is that they go up early. If the Niners go up 14 points, 17 points in this game's a wrap. Seattle's not coming back. If this game's close throughout and we screw around, we have a turnover, we go for field goals, because it's a division rival, and because they have some players, whether you believe in their quarterback or not, they have 2 really good wide receivers, and the Niners are a little banged up in the secondary, so it kind of favors the Seattle in that way. Then I think the 12th man might come in and be an advantage. If the 49ers get up early in this game, though, and they smack them around a little bit, and play that physical brand of ball, and Bosa gets a couple sacks, cause a turnover, whatever, then I think the Niners might win this game handily. So I think we win, even though, regardless of all the challenges that might happen, but I think it's going to be a very close game. I wouldn't be surprised if we won by like 6 points, 3 points. I think the line is 3 points on this game, so I think we might actually meet that line. But who knows? It sucks that we have to have a Thursday night game after such a physical, rainy at the end game that we had with the Bucs, but that's the NFL. It's a freaking money-making machine, and they don't care about player safety. So we'll see, Ted. We will see.
Plus, it's on turf, right?
Yeah, it's on turf too.
Player safety.
Great. No. Here's the question for the chat and with Ted that I had to ask, because it's definitely been something that's been creeping around in my brain. Dre Greenlaw has been playing out of his gourd, okay? Like, he's been playing really well. Some might argue right now, this moment, he's the best linebacker in football as far as just overall play. Ted, do you think that's true? And would you be even braver to say that right now he's playing better and is a better player right now? I'm not talking about in the whole scheme of things than Drake and then Fred Warner.
Right now, yes. The physicality, the violence, the speed that he's playing with is greater. Fred is better in coverage, especially coverage in the middle of the field. But overall, I think Dre Greenlaw is playing like the best linebacker in football right this minute. So no argument from me on that.
Yeah, I put that out on the Twitter Spaces, and you definitely responded. Or it might have been, no, it was the NWO stream we had on Monday, and you were adamant that you agreed, and I agree too. And anybody who's in their feelings about Fred Warner, I didn't say this is like a lifetime thing or is a career. I'm just saying right now, watching games all season, when he's not getting ejected and thrown out of games, Greenlaw brings a physicality to this defense, a presence. Like, him and Bosa are tone setters on this defense. Tone setters, which means like they're going to make a play within the game that has a chance to tip the scale, whether it's a strip sack, the interception that he had on Brady to tip, the recovery that he had of the strip that they got on the sack that sealed the game against Miami. Like, they're just those type of players. And, there's been a lot of argument that, Micah Parsons is better than Bosa. And, you had Emmanuel Ocho, who had like career 35 tackles in the NFL. He likes just, what it is with Ocho? He speaks really well. He likes to listen to himself talk because he's Mr. like super fluent guy. He like overpronounces everything. And like people just ripped him apart. And to me, do I think Dallas has got a good defense this year and Micah Parsons is really good? Absolutely. But to go back to Greenlaw, I just think Greenlaw's just the better player right now. I think he's playing with his ass on fire. He ain't going anywhere either. They locked him up, so that's a good thing. With that being said, do you think Azeez is the guy out this year?
I mean, it seems like it, but he might be reasonable just because he's not getting that much play because he's out.
Right.
Nickel situations. We're bringing Jimmy Ward in, so he's just not getting that much exposure. He had the fumble recovery against the Bucks, but he might be willing to take a hometown discount a little bit to stay, and I don't think it would be that huge of a discount for what we could pay him compared to what other teams are going to be willing to pay him. I don't think he gets the pub nationally, the publicity of what he deserves, so that could work in our favor a little bit.
That's true.
Also, when you're talking about Greenlaw, I would throw out the that pass breakup against Gesicki on 4th and 2. I thought that's where the game really pivoted. That was the pivotal play of the game for me. When I saw that, I'm like, we're winning this game. This game we got this. And obviously the scoop and score really was like icing on the cake, but I felt like the cake was the 4th and 2 where Mike McDaniel was going for it on the second time in that drive, going for it on 4th down. The first time was 4th and 1 from their own 19. And then we were talking about the cojones on the table and the narratives of how everybody's going to say how great McDaniel is, that he goes for it, and how Kyle's too conservative. And luckily, it didn't play out that way. He went to the well one too many times, and we won the game. So thank goodness.
He wasn't conservative at the end of the half with throwing that pass he threw with Purdy. That's something we haven't seen that. He has confidence in the kid that he doesn't have in Jimmy or Trey.
So that was right after the the interception that got called back due to the holding on Juwan Jennings. I mean, I'll tell you, watching that when I got home and watched the game after driving through the blizzard, and I didn't think we deserved that call. I thought it looked like Juwan tripped, and it was within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, and I just didn't think if I was a Bucs fan, I would have been unhappy with that call. I'll just say that. I'm glad we got it. I'm glad it didn't count as an interception because that would have taken not only the 7 we scored off the board, but then what if the Bucs scored a quick field goal there? It could have been a 10-point swing on that one penalty.
Yeah, that was it. The Niners have this year's been kind of a strange year where they've gotten a lot of the calls. A lot of their injuries haven't been, at least to their key guys, have been, somehow there's a window for them to come back. Mm-hmm. Man, I had another topic that somebody brought up earlier in the chat, and I cannot remember what it was. I wanted to ask you about it. Oh, yeah. It's too far back. Let's see if I can find it here, guys.
They're too busy.
David
McNews says he's doubling up with 2 devices. Love it.
Oh, Jordan Mason. We talked about that all right.
Debo spent a lot of plays as a decoy this season.
No.
But he'll be back.
Nope. I totally
forgot. Brian Schurer is the guy who diagnoses quick when the Debo injury, the physician who...
Oh, the one that could do it right from television, I guess?
I guess Brian Schurer.
I'll have to take a look at him. I forgot exactly what it was. It had something to do with the defense. But one other player I want to talk about, it's not one of the topics that we had, is our safety, fantastic safety that we have, Hufanga. Been a little bit on the risky side lately. He's blown some coverages, and it's definitely something that's concerning me down the stretch as we get closer to the playoffs. Do you think that's just the youth and the inexperience in him and that he'll get better at, or is that just something we're going to have to live with how he plays?
Yeah, I think experience will definitely help him. I think part of it is it's a ball hawk mentality, and he's got 4 interceptions, which is great. But when you're going for picks, sometimes you're gonna misjudge and you're gonna get beat. It was always the big debate with Tart and Jimmy Ward was like, do we want guys to get interceptions, or do we like guys who tackle well and hit hard and limit big plays? And there's an argument to be made for both, for sure. But yeah, I think Hufanga will improve. Unless it's just something that offensive coordinators have identified and they're going to keep going to the well on it. I think he's faster than people thought. That 4.6 40 speed doesn't really seem to translate to the field when against the Rams in week 4, when he picked off Stafford, he hit 21 miles an hour, which typically says, that's a little bit more like a 4.5 speed on a 40. And it's different things, right? One's top speed, one's acceleration. But ultimately, I think he plays pretty fast. And he plays with I love the way he hits. And I'll take a little bit of misplays for it seems like it's only 1 per game, too. It's kind of almost like, Mike McGlinchey a little bit, except for McGlinchey has more of them. But, where there aren't that many, they're just big. And I would say that about Hufanga. And they seem to also be early in the game too, which is another good thing. If he's doing those in the fourth quarter, I'm going to be a lot more worried than if he's doing those in the first quarter, which is where we've seen there was the Mike Evans one. There was the one against the Chargers. Forget that fourth string quarterback wide receiver's name who got us. And then obviously there was one against the Dolphins. One wasn't really him though, was it? It was Gibson who got burned on the Sherfield TD. Like Hufanga was there at the end.
Hufanga was there at the end of the one on the one to Tyreek Hill. He was supposed to give inside help because Travaris Ward was playing outside, and he
was wondering why
on the underneath.
I was wondering why Mooney Ward was so far off. Okay, that makes more sense.
He was supposed to pinch it. He was supposed to be able to, meet at the point, and he bit up on the underneath stuff, and he had no chance. He had the open,
wide open.
Plus, with a guy that fast, forget it. So,
yeah, insane.
Real quick score prediction for tomorrow's night's game.
I'll go with I had a Seahawks content creator on, and she said Niners 27 and Seahawks 21. So I'm going to go with hers. I like it.
I'm going 49ers 28, Seahawks 20. Pretty much the same score. I just think the Niners, it'll be close, but I think the Niners just find a way because they're the better team with the better roster. I think if Purdy does play, I think the Niners have a really good shot. If Josh Johnson plays, I think Seattle's chances go way to the roof. But Mac Gez says 49ers win 34-7. I hope you're right. Anything on the channel, your channel, you want to put out here on my channel to let people know about?
Nothing too much. I have a quiet rest of the week here. I crammed a few things in yesterday. I mean, if you look on TED Talks Ball, you can see a couple of Seahawks. One was a content creator named Candace Hagens came on. She writes for she does a podcast called Sports Ethos and Seahawks Ethos. And then I also had a Seahawks super fan named Shiv Ramdas, who I've gone back and forth on the timeline with for years. And he was a funny one who said basically like, the Niners typically will, play good defense and run the ball well, get a lead. And then somehow Pete Carroll Jedi mind tricks Kyle into throwing the ball 40 times. Things get weird and we lose. And I was like, yeah, pretty much. And not just against the Seahawks, I mean, you could say that about a lot of Kyle's biggest losses. So, got some interesting stuff from earlier this week, but not much coming up for the rest of the week. So I appreciate the shout out though.
No problem. And then I have a stream Friday. As you guys know, it's now a 3-man stream. It's me, Kelch Chronicles, and Amin the Dream. Amin, again, will not be able to make it again this week. He's a student. He's in high school. So we work with it. But now me and Kelch, we're going to hold it down for him on Friday. I'm working on another co-host who's also very busy with college. I'm not going to say who he is. You guys could probably figure out who I'm talking about. He's been on the show before. Real good. I'm trying to get him just in case. I left the option open, so it could be a 3-man panel. But if not, it's me and Kelch Chronicles 9 o'clock on Friday. We'll break down the game, hopefully a victory. And then I'm going to be quiet for the weekend too. I don't even know if with the Monday stream, I think it's going to be more maybe reviewing the Thursday night game and kind of looking forward. It's going to be kind of a weird week because such a gap. But yeah, that's going to do it for me and Ted, guys and gals in the chat. Thank you so much for coming through and supporting us. We'll be on Ted's channel next week doing First and Ted. Go support him on his channel, Ted Talks Ball. Let's get that algorithm going so that people find him and watch him and support him. Comment, like, subscribe on both channels. And until next time, everyone, we'll talk to you later. See ya.
Go Niners.